Welcome, Sir Steve, to this very important topic, which is concerning everybody throughout the world. In fact, what's happening in Iran, the Iran-US war that's taking place, US-Israel attacking Iran. And what would be your comments on why is it happening, Steve?
Well, it's interesting. The first thing to say is that the war is an illegal war. The US president does not have the authority to declare war on his own. It's got to go through Congress for approval, and it's not been through Congress. So the reason that they've come up to legitimize the whole process is, first of all, Marco Rubio said that he felt Israel was going to attack Iran and that Iran might possibly retaliate against the United States. And that didn't play out well. And then Trump came in a few days later and said, well, no, Iran was going to attack Israel, and that's why the United States got involved. So either way, the United States wasn't in any imminent or serious danger. So this thing should have gone before Congress. Now, the real reason, of course, is that Israel senses blood. It's severely weakened Hamas and Hezbollah and sees the opportunity to go for Iran. America's quite happy for them to do that because Iran is close to China and Russia, and indeed is part of the Silk and Road initiative that China have put in place. So geopolitically and strategically, Iran is a very important country. And America wants to make sure that they don't end up aiding China because they're frightened that China is going to become the predominant power in the world, the hegemon of the world. So I think Israel and America, for very different reasons, have combined to attack Iran.
Yeah, I mean, these countries who profess to be democracies, as you said, there's no democracy in the United States from the point of view that the decision is not made by the American government and certainly not by the American people. The number of protests that are taking place amongst the population against this war. The other pretext used is about Iran being a terrorist state. Who do you think are the real terrorists?
Well, I mean, we have had one president of a sovereign country in Venezuela, Maduro, kidnapped, and we've had another, not just a president of a country, the spiritual leader, but someone equivalent, I'd imagine, to the Pope, assassinated, and it's just beggars belief. Any semblance, any pretense of international law or a rules-based order has gone out the window. And really, this is just open Pandora's box. If we haven't got an international rules-based order and people can just go around assassinating who they want if they disagree with them, then everyone's going to be starting to do that. This is going to become a common theme.
Yeah.
So I think the Americans really, Trump doesn't know what the consequences. He hasn't seen the consequences of his action yet, and I think the chickens will come home to roost pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, the UN Charter, drawn after the Second World War, was basically to minimize possible wars again. And one important fundamental principle is the right of sovereignty of countries, that it's the people of each country who have a right to decide what kind of system, what kind of government they want. We may agree on, disagree, I don't believe that any country should be based on based on religion, but religion could be a part in our country. But obviously, up to those people, what kind of system, what kind of governments they want. And look at the whole history, even starting from George Bush,
Mm,
that he drew the line that he wanted to get rid of. They got rid of the government in Libya. Gaddafi, with the way he was hounded, and
mm,
yet all he was doing was, in fact, he brought from Libya from a very backward state
mm,
to a high level where education, health, and water reaching long distances supplied. And as soon as he said he didn't want to trade in the US dollar, his government was overthrown. And Iraq, as an example, same pretext used there. They didn't have any weapons of mass destruction, and yet that government was overthrown. Then the Syrian government, and wherever they've thrown governments, There's been no stability. There's been chaos. There's been civil strife. I would say, lastly, on the question of terrorism, what could be bigger terrorism than using a nuclear war in Japan, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki, when people are still suffering today? And the U.S. government's and Israeli government's hand is, there's blood from their hands of the kind of terrorism they carried out. Look at how many Palestinian children, how many families they've devastated. So I would say certainly they are the real terrorists using this pretext of democracy and fighting terrorism when they are the ones who violate democracy and terrorism themselves.
And I mean, one of the very first strikes was in a girls' school, and
Yeah,
180 young girls were killed. So, I mean, if this had been carried out by Iran or any other country against America, the whole world would be up in arms against it. And America just acts with impunity. But I think that what's interesting is that Iran um, are trying to widen the war out. They're attacking American bases in the Gulf states, and they're also attacking the oil supplies in the Gulf states, which I think the Americans didn't see coming. And we have the Strait of Hormuz closed now. So I think that the oil prices in Europe have already gone up by 50%.
yeah.
Um, if this continues for months or perhaps even years, um, God knows what will happen with the oil prices internationally. But if Trump has convinced himself that this is going to be over quickly, I think he's been misled.
Well,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So
last year, sorry, carry on. Mm.
yeah. Interestingly, the latest port that's come under attack is in the United Arab Emirates, and they claim they have shot down the Iranian missile. But if you look at the damage there, it looks like the missile has hit. It's disrupted the whole port, and they can't hide the fact that the port has been attacked, but they're saying it was caused by fire from the debris of a missile. Uh, you know, I think the what we never have in time of war is the truth, and it seems that the Iranians are piercing the so-called Iron Dome and the other missile batteries around the Middle East fairly regularly. So I think that this war has got a long way to go. It's got a long way to go.
Well, you're right. The myth of the Iron Dome and the myth that America's got these anti-missile patriotic, and they're failing, and the missiles are getting through. Well, an interesting point you mentioned about UAE being attacked,
Mm,
and there's a lot of propaganda in the media, obviously, the mainstream media, which is helping the US and all these NATO powers. They said, "Oh, look, it's an attack on the UAE, it's an attack on Bahrain, it's an attack on." Saudi Arabia, and it's against those people, and this is terrorism. But I came across the news when the people in Bahrain were actually applauding when the attack happened there because they realized that they themselves do not want the US bases in UAE or in Qatar or Bahrain. Of course, the ruling elites who
mm,
are an ally of US imperialism and allies of the Israelis. They are trying to project the idea that, look, our country's been attacked, but the people with Iran saying, look, we don't want these military bases. And Iran has made it very clear that they're not attacking ordinary people. They're trying to target mainly the
mm,
military bases, the oil fields, and that they have a right to do that because, after all, who started this attack? If their idea is for regime change,
mm.
then obviously the Iranian government will do everything possible to make sure that that doesn't happen. Even their leader has been shot. And look what you said. Sorry, the leader has been assassinated. And you mentioned, what if the Pope was assassinated? What
Yeah,
if somebody went and assassinated Trump? How would they react?
I know. I mean, I think that the big thing now is the longer this war goes on, the more the Arab peoples in the Gulf states will be alienated from their leadership. And it's possible that there might be revolts and uprisings which could be successful and overthrow those leaders, which have proved to be absolute puppets of America. And that's a big gamble for those Arab states. They're up until now, they've managed to keep the lid on it, but Iran is becoming more and more seen as the defender of the Islamic world, although there's differences between Shia and Sunni Islam. Iran is standing up for the Sunnis in Palestine. The other Arab states are not. Although Iran is a Shia state, they have been standing up for the Sunnis in Palestine.
Yep.
And and the so-called Sunni leadership have been appalling. They've been collaborating. Uh, they've been collaborating against the Palestinians with the Israelis. And I think that the people they are, people have had enough of it. I really can see if this goes on for a matter of months, we will have we will have uprisings in Arabia.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And if you look at the historical basis of this collaboration, then after the First World War, because all these countries used to be under the Turkish
Hmm?
Empire. And after the defeat of Turkey, after First World War, British imperialism in particular wanted to dominate the region. They collaborated with the US and they carved up that area, like Iraq was called Mesopotamia before. And the whole idea was because they knew the oil was there and they wanted to have a control of these rich resources of that region of the Middle East and control the Middle East. And that's how the Zionist state of Israel was created for that very purpose. They'll have a state that will help them to control the Middle East. So they're working still hand in hand with that. Of course, after the Second World War, British imperialism came subordinated, and the United States became the dominant power. Now, you very well pointed out, United States are declining, and they're afraid of China, and that's a big factor that's having a big role to play. Is what's going on as well.
I mean, one factor that we didn't actually talk about is that Trump's approval ratings are at a historic low, and that's because of the Epstein files. It's also because of the economy in the United States. Very high inflation, and people are suffering in the economy. And he's facing midterm elections in November. So if it continues on upon this trajectory, he will lose control of both houses of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, probably. And this is really his last chance, or Israel's last chance, to have a go at Iran before the Democrats and hopefully more sensible people get control of the Congress. So this is possibly another reason why he's acted now. And let's face it, we're me and you are sort of dyed in the wool Marxists and realists in a way. We don't go in for conspiracy theories very much, but you have to think, have Israel got more on Trump through their Mossad agent, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell? Have
Mm.
they got more to blackmail Trump into doing this? We don't know. I mean, it's a question, it's a legitimate question. I mean, 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been talking, I guess, but the revelations that have come out, have they got something that's forcing Trump's hand to do this?
Well, Trump is just the leader of the United States, but behind real power behind that, big money giants, financial oligarchy, for example, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgan Chase Bank, the Deutsche Bank, all of them drive the war industry, and it's a big profit for them, war. And they've got a whole history of supplying money to all sides. Even when in the Second World War, these big financial oligarchs supplied money to Hitler as well as to the other side.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. So the real driving force in those countries are these big financial oligarchs, big businesses who benefit from war. But you mentioned about Trump, of even taking that, somebody made a very funny comment in a way that Trump is trying to have regime change there. If
Yeah.
it lasts long, it might be a regime change in the United States.
Honestly,
Trump
yeah.
might be out.
Yeah. Let's hope so.
So that was something. But you mentioned another point about why the Arab leaders are not squeaking. I mentioned firstly how the big powers carved up the Middle East, but in the process of carving up House of Saud, Faisal at that time, they were the people, the puppets that actually collaborated with British imperialism at the
Mhm.
time and the United States in order to ally uh, against the governments that were being nationalist, that were being patriotic for themselves, wanted to use their own resources. But these, like the family in Saudi Arabia and these sheikhs in Qatar, UAE, they grew, you could say, the elite safeguarded and grew in the process of collaboration, and
Yeah,
they continue to do that. But the people of those countries are certainly justice minded. And if it lasts longer, you mentioned, pointed out, their sympathy is going to go more and more with the Iranian people and the Iranian government, because that is one country that has dared to impose US imperialism and Israel on what's happening in Palestine. The one country that took an anti-imperialist stand
yeah,
against the genocide in Palestine. And there's another big reason because they would rather have a regime that also collaborated with them and have a regime change and bring the Shah. So, just a few words from you on that historical background about the Shah of Iran and them trying to bring his son forward. Perhaps you can comment a bit on that.
yeah. Well, this so-called Shah of Iran was actually not of even if we're talking about Shahs being the descendants of royal blood, he was not a descendant of royal blood.
Yeah.
His grandfather was a corporal in the army who overthrew the real Shah of Iran. So the Pahlavis are not even real royalty. They're just stooges who had some weight in the army and were able to serve the imperialists for a period of time. And even then, even although they were subservient, they were forced into by the people of Iran, in a way, trying to impose imperialism or at least limit the theft of the Iranian oil by the imperialists. And once they did that, the Americans helped overthrow him, as did the French. So we have a kind of circle of a revolving door of the Americans and the French and the British getting involved in Iran. Of course, they were involved firstly in the overthrow of the leftist Mossadegh.
Yeah.
Um, the British and the CIA financed and basically armed and financed a terrorist organization to get rid of Mossadegh. They then put in the Shah, uh, who they later got rid of. The CIA later got rid of by putting in Ayatollah Khomeini.
I mean, yes, in the sense that what they were afraid of was that the brutal rule of Shah of Iran, people were rebelling against that. And there was a growing possibility that people may have gone for a different kind of system, whereby it's a progressive system, nationalist or progressive, even a social revolution could have occurred. But that was another way they could have prevented that. So you got the occurrence of the Islamist Republic there. Ayatollah and Iran became more and more wanting to exert their own independence
Yeah.
and it took a stand, an anti-imperialist stand, and look at the heavy sanctions were imposed. Now, the reason why I mentioned that, somebody said to me only yesterday, look, this is a brutal dictatorship. And I said, look, the Shah of Iran was very brutal. That's why he was overthrown. But it's the underlying factor behind that is that people want to use the resources and wealth of their countries for their own benefit. And whoever took a stand, these countries tried to overthrow. The same thing happened as you said, Mossadegh, then Shah came. And when Nasser opposed uh, US imperialism, and look at that June Six-Day War that happened in there when the Arab countries were trying to exert their independence. So you're quite right there. They'll try to bring in puppets. And if they do try to bring the Shah of Iran's son, which he won't be accepted, the people will probably throw him.
We won't accept that. And if the United States have got any reasonable intelligence, they will know. And I think even before this all happened, I think Trump dismissed Pahlavi as
Yeah.
it's just not credible. He said he doesn't have any influence in Iran. outside of, maybe a few thousand fanatics and a sort of large base of people who fled Iran, a sort of diaspora who fled Iran after
Mm.
the Islamic Revolution. I don't think he's popular, and they've got a lot of money. They can pay a lot of protesters. They can bribe a lot of politicians, but I think you're absolutely right. There's no way they can put somebody like that in charge of Iran because the Iranian people just won't have it.
Well, they thought by assassinating Ali Khamenei, they're going to spread terror, fear, and other leaders will be scared, and perhaps the whole thing will break down and people will rise up again. It's not going to happen. In fact, with the assassination of Ali Khamenei, more and more people were united in Iran. He could have hidden, he could have gone and saved himself if he wanted to, but that's actually set an example. No, I'm going to remain steadfast and we're going to fight back. And others are there. So they made a martyr out of him, and not just a martyr, that more and more Iranian people have crystallized, and a lot of support growing in the world, or all these countries, more for Iran than for these puppet regimes in each country.
Yeah, I think Trump, who famously dodged military service in the United States by claiming he had bone spurs. I mean, he's the only person I think that bone spurs cleared up and didn't bother him in the rest of his life. But he completely he doesn't understand the martyrdom aspect of, in particular, Shia Islam, and the respect that that gains amongst ordinary people. And he's been ill-advised. He's been ill-advised, or he's been bribed, or he's just too completely uh, ill-informed to understand the repercussions of what he's doing. And I think let's hope that this does bring regime change in America. I really do hope that that happens. And I think that the American people have woke up to both Zionism and their own country's imperialism. A lot of American people have woken up to that, and that's why people like ICE are being deployed against their own people in the United States.
Yeah.
So, could you imagine the prospect of a socialist America? Because who knows, this might be the crisis that awakens people all over the world.
Well, it's parallels being drawn now. If you look at the beginning of the First World War, then the beginning of the Second World War, after 1928, there was a severe depression. And you had two opposing forces coming to power in Germany. Even you had Hitler becoming popular, rising, and him using fascism. And he said, "Oh, I'm bringing National Socialism." Developed the war industry and channeled all the wealth which the banks were lending out to Germany towards the war industry, which is benefiting companies like Siemens, Volkswagen. They were the real beneficiaries of this turning into war industry footing. So will the beneficiaries will be monopoly capitalists in the United States. But that right-wing fascism and racism being brought up and to divide the German people's opposition. Otherwise, it would have been a revolutionary struggle in Germany. It almost happened soon after soon after the Russian Revolution. It could have happened after the Depression as well. So to subdue that, they brought Hitler. But let's look at Trump is saying the same thing, right wing, and is increasingly carrying out repression against people. But people are rising up. They're again fed up with wars. Look at the support for the Palestinian cause. People have been angry against the genocide of Palestinian people. The young generation is becoming more and more conscious. So I agree with you that it could lead to revolutionary struggles in one or many countries and even change of regimes, what progressive forces and the working class people who are conscious want to bring people a social system that will drive the economy in their favor and give them real democracy in their favor, and not Trump's following the fascism of the Hitlerite type.
Can't think of anything else better than the American people rising up and overthrowing Trump and creating some sort of socialist state. So let's hope that's the result of all this.
Yeah, either the world will be decimated in World War III, or people throughout the world will rise up, make sure that they become victorious and put an end to this kind of fascist dictatorships that are emerging. and bring the world wars to an end and safeguard the future of humanity for the benefit of all. Thank you.